give people the ability to not be fearful or overwhelmed by it. Making the best decisions that you can with the information that you have.
Welcome back, everyone, to another Tech Times exclusive. Today, we're talking to Alexandra Smith. She's a co-founder and partner of the Sustainability Group, and she's here to tell us about FUTUREPLUS. Alexandra, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you ever so much for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm very excited about this topic. I think it's one of the most prominent topics on earth right now. I mean, it's what everyone should be going for. So if you could please, just let's jump right in with talking about the Sustainability Group and also what you guys are doing with FUTUREPLUS.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Sustainability Group is effectively a reasonably traditional sustainability consultancy that I set up with my co-founder, Mike Penrose, about 2 years ago in 2019. We do a little bit of foundation management, a little bit of sustainability risk management, but using Mike's previous experience, he used to be the CEO of UNICEF. I used to work in sailing, in commercial sport. So when we ended up working together on a project, trying to put sensors on the bottom of round the world race yachts, to be effectively able to carbon map and sound map and understand the world's oceans a little bit more. Unfortunately, COVID put a stop to all of that. So Mike and I sat down and thought the next most sensible thing to do was to try and democratize sustainability and to make it a little bit more accessible and achievable and affordable for companies. We formed the Sustainability Group, and we were doing a lot of work with organizations to help them become more sustainable, to consider what they thought sustainability was and how it worked with their business model. And we worked with everyone from 2-person startups all the way to global organizations. And we realized we were being asked effectively the same questions by everybody. They were just using the information that they got differently. And because of that, we, over the last 18 months, have been developing a platform, which is FUTUREPLUS, which we have built and developed to allow organizations of any size across any sector to be able to understand what sustainability is to them and their business model, and then to be able to measure where they are now, but almost more importantly, where they'd like to be within 3 years, and be able to quantify that with a score and be held accountable to it, but also to provide them the support and the advice ongoing from there to actually help make those changes. Because we found it was a real sort of gap in the market of people either were or weren't sustainable, and that's what they were sort of being told. And actually what we wanted to do was say, well, nobody's quite there yet, but this is where you are, this is where you want to be, and let us help you move forward to where that is.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. And like you said, there was a gap, I'm sure, in the market, it's not always a good thing to say, this is where you are, and then like, that's it, yeah. And then you leave companies that are producing, various things. It's not really their forte. So it's great that you and your partner have come in and really filled in that gap.
Yeah, we found that, sustainability kind of came in different flavors, if you like. There was this sort of super academic level, which just didn't feel approachable to people running everyday businesses. And then there were incredibly sustainable businesses with sustainable outputs that were really shooting and doing incredible things, but it didn't necessarily feel achievable to sort of everyday companies. And we absolutely believe, and one of the foundations and the fundamentals of when we talked about people about sustainability is that we want everybody to get a little bit better, rather than to take just a few who are absolutely brilliant, because those few that are going to be absolutely brilliant, they want it anyway, they understand it, and they know they need to get there. We really wanted to help all of those people that aren't necessarily sustainability companies or have sustainability at their core, but everyone knows that we need to do something. but actually it's such a vast and wide world. Even what sustainability means to different people. Some it's microplastics in the ocean, to others it could be net zero and carbon reduction, and to others it's about inclusion and making sure we bring everyone up. So we wanted to be able to make it suitable for all those business models and get everybody to do something to make themselves better, and because of all the benefits that go along with that as well.
Okay, so speaking of those key pillars such as economics and everything, what did you mean when you said that sustainability has to be measured across these 5 pillars, and they are economic, diversity and inclusion, environment, climate, and social, in order to meet the 2030 goals?
Yeah, absolutely. So we base sustainability, or our view of sustainability, on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, are effectively 17 goals that 100, and I will be told off for this, 193, 196 countries have all agreed we need to get to. And top line, nobody's going to disagree. It's no poverty, improving life below water, life below land, sustainable cities, quality education, all of those things. Once you start to dig in, the indicators that sit underneath them start to get a bit complicated, and they are originally created to be normative and for governments to measure. But we know top line that's where we're all reaching for. And the idea is that by 2030, if we get to there, then the world will be a better place. And there is a huge funding gap between where we would like to be and where we are now. And that was never, ever going to be filled with government money. It needs to come as well from the public sector. And so when we look at sustainability, we look across those 17 goals, and we effectively broke it down into those 5 that you mentioned. So climate and environment, which most people feel is what sustainability means to them, but also social and economic, and then also diversity and inclusion. And the reason why, the same reason that the SDGs covers all of those, and the reason that we have all 5, is there is so many compromises and unintended consequences within sustainability. So any decision you make has more than a direct relationship to the problem you are trying to solve. So we all know that we should be driving more electric vehicles, for example, or the turbines behind me in this image here. But it has supply chains, there are people in it, there's economics within it, and all of those things are affected. And if you don't think of them as a whole, then you start to potentially cause issues in areas that you don't mean to. So it's taking sustainability and looking at as wide a picture as possible, and then making the best decisions that you can with the information that you have, to be able to create really positive impact and positive progress.
See, okay, I think it reminds me of, speaking of, you fix one problem, but if you don't pay close enough attention, or if you're focused solely in one area, then you tend to create problems in another. And it's very similar to the ambulance service in Japan, where the ambulance ride is completely free. However, you have to wait about a half hour before an ambulance will come and get you, because they're so busy. So that's kind of the same thing that's happening,
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to the turbines, they need minerals, for example, that are reasonably rare and need to be mined, and they tend to be mined from places like the Democratic Republic of Congo, or people are looking now at doing seabed mining. Now that's going to have a biodiversity effect on the seabed that we probably don't fully understand yet. And in the Democratic Republic of Congo, we know there's already social impact issues, child labor, supply chain, workers' rights. So to say, if you just have tunnel vision of trying to look at a singular problem without considering the wider effects, then you're just moving the problem. Like you say, it's free, but now it's too busy and now nobody wants to use it. You're just causing more and more problems. And that, again, kind of comes back to why we formed the business. As I say, my business partner spent 25 years in the humanitarian sector, and there seemed to be this sort of cyclical relationship between business and charity, where businesses could do bad or not do good. There's a lot of negative screening, like that business doesn't do bad things, but actually the charity would come along and do the good things. And what needs to happen actually is the business needs to be good, and the charity needs to help support that and be a driving force for taking it in the right direction. But it shouldn't mean that the business stops trying to do positive impact rather than just reduce its negative. So and then it goes back to what we're trying to help businesses do right from the very beginning, from inception for startups and everybody up, is that provide them the tools to know what their decisions mean up to a point, across those 5 themes. So, have you considered your supply chain? Are you treating your workers properly? Do you want, are you thinking about where your waste is going? What's your energy doing? And it's a lot to think of. So what we try to do is break it down into really small steps, and help people make that progress in bite-sized chunks so that they can do it without too much resource, because everyone still needs to run their businesses. And economic is in there for lots of reasons. You can't be a sustainable business unless you keep going.
Right.
So economics has to sit in it. You have to be a commercially successful business. So it has to consider, that has to be part of the bigger picture when you look at it. And by breaking down these sort of big things, if we're all going to get to net zero by 2050, and we're going to stop the planet warming and have a 1.5 limit, then it means that we all need to do something a little bit to be able to help us get there. But that can seem hugely overwhelming. And we're trying to sort of bring that down and go, but this week we just do this. And then in 3 months, we're going to do that. And then in 9 months, once all that's done and you understand it, then we're going to start to move on to this section. So we give people the ability to not be fearful or overwhelmed by it.
Right. Well, that's actually another question I wanted to ask you. The UN has a 2030 goal, and the overall goal of 2050. Now, do you think, being as you're very well versed in sustainability, do you think that those are reasonable goals, or they're more so wishful thinking?
I think, like I say, there's a massive funding gap between to be able to achieve those. I think that absolutely they should be a goal, and it's all something that we should be moving towards. And we are very, very good when a lot of people come together and create movements in the world at doing the right thing. And I think we all know that. Well, I feel, and I'm always very nervous that when you're in it all of the time, that sometimes you have to peek your head out and see what the rest of the world is doing, because, we can all get sort of rolled up in what we're doing. But I do feel that, we work with everyone from law firms to creative agencies to dry cleaning to canned drinks manufacturers, and they're all thinking about this. And we help keep providing evidence that it's a good business benefit. And I think between those two things of people wanting to do better and thinking that they should be more sustainable, but it also being commercially viable, and something that is potentially a commercial incentive, I think will get everyone moving a little bit further forward. And like all things, it cascades down. Once businesses are doing it, businesses are just people. They're a group of people that all come together, and once those people become interested and passionate about it, they take it and it becomes part of their lives. So I think there's every possibility, and that the world is absolutely going in the right direction to solve these problems. I think sometimes there needs to be a very realistic view. If we get to net zero, we're not going to be without fossil fuels. Right. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be reducing and looking for alternatives. It's about really sort of just trying to make those changes and push through into the right direction. It's like technology, developing and evolving. Right.
Absolutely. So for example, if someone is watching here, they're very sustainability minded, and maybe they have a startup, or they're thinking about getting into some type of commercialized business. What advice would you give that person? Like, if say they're starting from the ground up, is there anything that is very important from the beginning, so you don't have to backtrack later?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're a big fan of not retrofitting when you feel big enough to be able to do the things, because it's often much more complicated. Having helped businesses do it, it's often much more complicated, and it's often much more expensive. I think, without going back to it, but I think the first point is just don't get overwhelmed by it. You know, it can feel like a really, really big problem, but it's like anything, you know, you don't eat the whole elephant in one bite.
Right.
Preferably you don't eat the whole elephant, but you know, you start small and grow with it. If you start to make little changes to what you're doing, and you know, with Future Plus, what we're trying to get people to do is to understand what those things might be. We have about 200 indicators that we ask small companies to answer, but we have about 300 for large companies. And that's because as you grow, you should have a greater responsibility to do more things. But right at the beginning, you know, making sure that your staff are treated well, that you're checking your supply chain as well as you can, that you're considering about what you're producing and, you know, where it's going, your waste and your energy. I think if you start with those things and then start to build up, you can start to just put small changes into business, which sometimes save money. Saving energy is always a good thing. You know, worldwide energy prices are skyrocketing, particularly here in the UK. So saving it is absolutely commercially viable and a good thing to do. But other things, if you choose your investment, particularly supply chains, if you're a startup scale up and you're going to have an incredibly complex supply chain within 5 years, I can absolutely guarantee you it is much easier to put the right checks in places at the beginning when you have 5, 10, 15 than when you have 1,000, 1,500 suppliers. And you know, that can really help with your risk profile as well, because the companies that are looking at sustainability also tend to have a longer term perspective on their risk profile, so that they, you know, are making better decisions over those periods.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think it's also important to point out that a lot of investors now are basing, you know, a lot of their decisions, business decisions on, you know, are you sustainable? Like, well, not necessarily sustainable as a business, but are you moving towards that goal that we've set for ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, Larry Fink's letter at BlackRock has sort of becomes infamous now, and people have very, very strong opinions on it. But what the trend is that the conditionality of finance and money is coming down from the very, very top, from the really big investment powerhouses. And then that comes down to the slightly smaller ones, then that comes down to your investment banks, and that trickles down to venture capital and to private equity. And all of this money is coming down from our pension funds, because we're, you know, lots of people are going out to their pension funds and saying, I want a more ethical and sustainable pension. And so they're saying to everybody that invests all that money, right, make it more ethical, make it more sustainable. And what we found is that the people at the very bottom, these 2 people startups, or if one person sitting around their dining room table is looking back up at, you know, where all that finance comes from, and being told to report on what's called ESG reporting, so environmental, social and governance, but not really getting the support to be able to do so. Right. So again, we work with a lot of finance houses, with VCs and PEs, with Future Plus, but actually it benefits them, and it also benefits the companies that go through Future Plus, because they have a really, really easy way to report, this is what I'm doing now, this is where I want to be, and it's in line with my financial forecasting. So not only do I say I'm going to grow like this in 3 years, which is what every investor expects, but I'm also going to grow sustainably, and this is everything that I'm going to think about over 3 years. But we found it's you know, nearly every investment deal that we know that's going through at the moment, there is some form of ESG reporting, and it's becoming, it's not particularly standardized at the moment. We would like to think that we will help be part of that standardization process. But also, you know, requests for proposals, tenders, all of those things are now coming with more and more conditions or expectations of reporting what your sustainability is. And at the moment, it can be really hard to quantify that into something that you can track progress against. But hopefully we are solving that issue.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's great, you know, that a focus. And to be honest, when I learned about your company, the sustainability group sounds like something that's been around for 25 or 30 years. Like, it seems like it should have been a thing for a long time. And to learn that you guys are basically, you know, in the scope of things, you know, a brand new company, and the work that you're doing, it's really inspiring. And I want to thank you personally, because, you know, like you said, you are maybe facilitating a change that is most definitely needed.
Yeah, we like to think of ourselves as sort of at the moment as small but mighty, and we're aiming for just mighty. But yeah, no, it's been a real, it's been a real labor of love, and what we find we're really lucky. We work in sustainability, but as I say, we work with everyone from 2 people up to very large global organizations. We work across all sectors, and we're in a really, really lucky place. I think, the for us as well, the timing has been fantastic. As people have come out of COVID, I think everybody has had a greater respect for what change can mean to companies of all sizes. That I think, all of these sort of potential things that we were told could happen in the future, I think we've all had a real taste of it over the last 2 years. And it feels to us, as people have come out, that actually everyone's gone, okay, I'm going to start thinking about what I need to be doing, and I need to make sure that my company is set up for the next 3 to 5 years. I'm going to grow with this. Let's make it as sustainable as possible. And those, as I say, those benefits are becoming clearer and clearer with investment, with tenders. Retaining staff seems to be a lot easier for companies that are considering it, recruiting new workforces, and because we look at sustainability across all of those 5, every time you see a story in the newspaper about a company that's treated someone badly, that their marketing hasn't been inclusive, it all sits under the same ecosystem for us. And you can sort of see how, if they thought about it, that a lot of it isn't particularly intended, some of it is, but if they just sort of had the ability to sort of stand back and look and put sustainability as part of their strategy, rather than had their business strategy and sustainability on the side, that so many things could be avoided.
Right. And it makes perfect sense that after COVID, which I like to refer to as the great shakeup, which just pretty much changed everything, much like a puzzle or something, but as we start to settle back in, I think it's important that people and companies and, yourself, your neighbor, everyone, as we try to resettle, we don't settle as we resettle, right? Like we can definitely come back better and stronger. And I think it's the perfect time to do it. It's almost, this may get me in trouble, but it's almost like, COVID was, there's a silver lining, maybe we should say. It's a very thin silver lining.
Yeah, I'm always also very careful about COVID. I've been, or the pandemic, over the period of time, I've been hugely lucky as part of it, and I haven't lost anybody close to me. And actually, what it gave us as a business was time and space that just didn't exist and doesn't exist now. So Mike and I started working properly on FUTUREPLUS in the end of April, May 2020. Mike had actually just spent 6 weeks in the world's largest refugee camps in Bangladesh, the Rohingya refugee camps, sort of looking at the medical response to the pandemic there. And he came back, and we'd had all of these ideas which were effectively FUTUREPLUS, but hadn't really been able to pull it together. And the whole world had effectively stopped for really a good 6 months. I think everyone kind of expected it to start in September, but it didn't really, particularly in the UK, pick up as people expected. And then we went back into lockdown in December. So it gave us this sort of 6 to 9 months period where we spent hours debating detail, big detail, small detail, moral subjectivity, which is, a lot of the work that we've done is taking qualitative data and making it quantitative. So looking at social impact and giving it a number, and looking at diversity and inclusion and giving it a number for businesses so that they can track and monitor. And the algorithms that sat behind that, the rules that take it, we had so much time to be able to develop and really get to the nitty gritty. And, I'm not meant to use the word, I don't think, but we argued a lot, but it did us a huge justice, because we really feel that what we came out with was so much better than if we sort of had to work it and build it around what normal life had actually looked like, and with all the meetings and the business and the travel and everything else that happens when you don't have that opportunity. So yes, as you say, horrible, but taking what you can from it, it definitely did us some service.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you speak about the companies using FUTUREPLUS. How, if I were a startup or even an established company or a brand, how would I approach you to actually say, I want my FUTUREPLUS? I don't know exactly how you would say, but yeah.
So, well, we tend to have people come to us from a whole different manner, but it's as easy as just visiting our website and clicking on register and coming onto the platform, and then we have an incredible team that take people through. They onboard them, explain what sustainability means to us, so that they can have an understanding, and help them go through the steps. When you get to FUTUREPLUS, as I say, there's effectively a question set. If you're a small company and not in manufacturing, of about 200 questions, which feels like a lot, but actually it's really the first step. And once you've gone through, with the amount of information that you can garner from it is huge. And that's split between those 5 themes, and then each of those 5 themes is split into subcategories, which are in traditional ESG reporting frameworks. So governance it gets the highest score, leadership, workforce, supply chain, all the way down to the global goals. And are you working towards those issues within the global goals? You go through the question set, and then what you come out with at the end is your actual score of where you are and your ambition score of where you want to be. And that's broken down into those 5 themes. But then everything that you've said you wanted to be an ambition, you also get a roadmap, which guides you through, effectively, is your next 3-year sustainability strategy. And then our main role after that is actually helping you understand what each of those ambitions mean for you and your business. So somebody can phone us up and say, I'm a hairdresser and it says I need to be considering my waste. What do I do? And then we help guide people through those different questions, depending on what they do, where they do. And we have an incredible team here that seem to know everything from toilet roll to avocados to putting together ESG frameworks for when floating on stock markets in New York, and everything in between. So we just sort of guide people through that process.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, Alexandra, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you ever so much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome here anytime. If you guys have an announcement or something that you need to put out there, we are definitely here for you. I think it's great what you're doing. I will dive in and do a little more research and see maybe how I can contribute, or any way, even on just the consumer side, if there's companies that I or products that I like to use, I'll see, if okay, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing, and maybe do a little shifting of my consumer habits. I do believe it's very important. And again, I want to thank you for actually stepping up, I guess we could say, and really making a difference.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah. And we will always accept any help, as I say, small and mighty, with an aim to just be mighty. So anything that helps us get there, we are always really, really very chuffed to accept.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you.